one retelling of the history of mathematics, but it's a history you've never, ever, ever read or imagined before. Because I kept treading across the fact that all of our histories are written as if everybody knew all along the things that we know.
The only thing was, when someone was speaking, you said that if we keep moving, we can move forward.
Right.
And I don't know how you know that we're not moving backward.
Well, you move forward by creatively reinventing the past. For example, when the Japanese were confronted by Admiral Perry in something like 1854, and his ships were capable of doing things that the Japanese had never seen before. They thought they had modern artillery, they had cannon. After all, the Chinese had invented the cannon, and the Japanese picked up most of their culture from the Chinese and improved on it. So, but they discovered that the cannon that were carried on Perry's ships had twice the range of theirs, and they could fire all they wanted at these ships out at sea, and they couldn't reach them. They were out of range. They also discovered that Perry was not a victim of the winds, that he could sail into the wind as easily as he could sail against the wind. And suddenly they realized they were vulnerable. And a bunch of young samurai came up with an idea. And the idea was, okay, we're going to modernize the country. We're going to imitate the West. We're going to imitate its judicial system. We're going to imitate its governmental system. We're going to imitate its industries. We're going to imitate its science. We're going to imitate everything. How are we going to do it? By going back to the past. So they plucked a piece of Japanese history, the 8th century, when instead of ruling through a shogun, the emperor had ruled directly. And they called for honoring the emperor and repelling the barbarian. It was a slogan. And did I get the slogan precisely right? Right. So, in the name of going back to the purity of 8th century Japan, they totally remade the country. And in 1905, the Tsar in Russia had a problem. His people were rebelling against him. They thought he was, they were really discontented, and that's an understatement. Now, if you know your psychology, even if you haven't read modern psychology, you know the best way to galvanize your people around them is to start a war. Especially a war against somebody so small and helpless that it's an automatic win. So the Tsar picked a small and helpless country that was an automatic win, Japan. Well, Japan had been running around with Bushido blades just 30 years earlier. Japan was an automatic conquest. So he took his entire Baltic fleet and sent it around, probably the southern coast of Africa, and sent it up to Japan. And guess what? He lost the whole damn thing. Why? Because in only 4 years, in the name of honor the emperor, repel the barbarian, go back to the 8th century, the Chinese or the Japanese had adopted the French legal system, the British governmental system, the Prussian military system, and all of our modern technologies, and we're capable of making modern battleships so much better than those of the Russians that it was ridiculous. So often the most...
Called the Meiji Restoration.
Yes, exactly. And often the best way to move forward is to reinvent the past. In fact, that's all we can do in a sense.
But people talk about moving forward or backward as to whether or not the human race will survive. And Bill Joy, you know, a while ago...
Oh, I hated his article. I loathed it.
Bill Joy said, let's just stop all research and all this. Now, I know Bill Joy well enough to know that he didn't mean that. But that's
good to hear.
That was his approach.
Yeah.
To getting people to start thinking about things. It's
right.
the same thing that a fellow named Isaac Asimov talked about when he wanted people to stop having nuclear weapons.
Right.
He said that the reason we will never find another group of extraterrestrials in the universe is because when they reach our level, they will destroy themselves before they ever last any longer, and so the odds of ever meeting another group up to our level is vanishingly small. Now, I think he said that because he was head of CND, the nuclear disarmament group, and it's a way of keeping people to think.
Well,
that
here's
they better not.
Here's a book that Isaac Asimov never had a chance to read. First of all, the Lucifer Principle has this tiny little section in which it points out that the rate of violence in the modern world ever since 1650 has been on a constant decline. We imagine that we are the most violent people in the history of humanity. In reality, exactly the opposite is the case. We imagine that with the massive industrial killing of the First and Second World Wars, that we have outdone any other people in fact, the statistics show just the opposite. Well, that's in the Lucifer principle. But now, Steven Pinker has taken that concept and expanded it to one of the most magnificent books you'll ever read, The Better Angels of Our Nature. And he has given so many statistics that demonstrate this that it's ridiculous. And even things like, remember in the 1990s, the mid-1990s, when the game Grand Theft Auto came out, all of us thought, oh my God, this is going to destroy the minds of kids. It's going to turn them into violent
When what came out?
Grand Theft Auto.
Oh,
Grand
yeah,
Theft Auto
game.
is a really, I mean, not only is it violent in the shoot-'em-up sense, it's also violent in the sense that you steal people's cars, you carjack them, but there are prostitutes. And if you invite a prostitute in your car and she does what prostitutes do and you're a satisfied customer, but you really don't want to pay the money, you shoot her. I mean, this is really deplorable, appalling. But it turns out that since 1992, when the game came out, violence has been plummeting. So it turns out that a lot of fantasy forms of violence, a lot of the pop culture forms of violence are outlets for our aggressive urges that allow us to calm down. And Margaret Mead made a very good point. She said that it has always been forbidden for humans to kill other human beings. Murder has always been has always been forbidden. But
No, that's, you contradict yourself.
no, I said forbidden. Forbidden.
No. For humans to kill another.
That's right. It's always been.
No, and then to kill another is different from to murder another.
Wait, let me finish the story, okay? Because she basically said that you are not allowed to kill another human being. The problem, she said, is that the name of our tribe always means the human beings, which means that anybody who's not a part of our tribe is not a human being, therefore it's acceptable to kill them. And what Margaret Mead was getting toward was the fact that in ancient hunter-gatherer days, tribes were roughly 50 people. So there were 49 people you were not allowed to kill. It could go up to 135, 150. But her point was this. By the time Margaret Mead was writing about this, the tribe of Americans had gone up to 135 million. And this was the first time in history where the people you were not allowed to kill, your fellow human beings, were 135 million. And this is how she explained the decrease in violence. And Steven Pinker describes it differently. Steven Pinker says that we've had a humanitarian revolution that's been going on since the 1650s. And it has to do with literacy. And we became literate and became capable of reading about all kinds of violence, but we also invented novels and we started stepping into the minds of our fellow human beings. And that allowed us to have a picture of the other human of a kind that we never had before. And for reasons totally, really completely unknown even to Steven Pinker, we started manufacturing literature that said we've got to stop torturing cats, we've got to start torturing dogs, we've got to start torturing cows, and we've got to stop torturing each other. And then, if you read a book called The Genius of the Beast, A Radical Re-Vision of Capitalism, which is one of my books, it will tell you that ever since the Industrial Revolution, the Western system, which has produced miracles, the Western system has operated through a balance of elements. And those elements have included private industry, which you would expect, government, and the protest industry. And the protest industry has been with us ever since the 1780s, when it began as an anti-slavery movement. Then in 1848, it became an anti-war movement. That was when Henry David Thoreau wrote against the Mexican War and wrote on civil disobedience. Then in the 1890s, it became an anti-imperialism movement, and there was a global and international anti-imperialism league. All along, there was the women's suffrage movement, in addition to all of that. So we've had the balancing factors. We have dreamed of peace ever since the days of Isaiah. When Isaiah's most promising lines was that we should turn our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks.
Which we haven't done.
But we have done it far more than we realize.
But I wonder if you talk about personal, McLuhan or Joyce even used to say that the violence is within the identity quest and so forth. And I just watched last week or two ago that we had the 50th anniversary of 1962,
right?
Where the Homo sapiens species, which was able to have a self-reflective consciousness, ask the bigger questions and so forth, probably uniquely, but they also had the ability to extend their consciousness through tools and technology and make the world other than, in an Eden-like sense, is the way most of the creatures encountered the environment.
Right.
And one of the abilities that we had was to make tools that had a two-edged sword way about them. One was, with civilization, you got as 10,000 years ago, you got political systems where some people could be in control, and they would be interested in having weapon systems that would give them an advantage to conquer the tribe or to intimidate or subsume the tribe in the other valley and become strong for their tribe. And it's called realpolitik.
Right.
Or realpolitik's too strong, real politics,
right,
rather than ideology or something like that. And that's been extended to a point where now those weapon systems in 1962, apparently to the modeling and so forth that existed then, when that got so very close to the unleashing of the weapons that would have destroyed certainly civilization and everything that accounts for it, but it would have not abolished. They didn't have weapon systems that were so powerful that they would, if they were to be unleashed in a spasm of hatred, eliminate the entire Homo sapiens species. That, apparently, for most of the modeling, I wonder if you've come across it, that didn't get to be the case in terms of the modeling of something that can't be tested in the Petri dish, but didn't get there until about 1970.
right.
But the weapons that exist on one side of that equation are species lethal. That is, they have the capability to stop consciousness in the
right,
universe as evolving if humanity represents the leading edge of that. And on the other side of that, they've also created they've also brought about life support capability through ever increasing elegance of design, ephemeralization, doing more with less, knowledge of the larger issues that we can take into account now in a way we've never been able to in human history, in a kind of quickening way, to where there was a higher percentage of the world population that could be seen to be halves through time on a percentage basis. That out of history there were fewer, and that would include not only just food and housing and that sort of thing, but also knowledge. So now we live in a time where we were, and then some projections of that, what percentage of the world population could be realistically seen to be at the level of capability haves as opposed to have-nots through time. That it's increasing in the higher percentages there, and that we crossed the line, at least a good deal of the modeling, we crossed the line where we crossed that 50% mark.
right,
And that's projected out from the past, that we were in a certain sense transcending material scarcity
right.
at the level of capability, both at the level of capability.
Well, one of the
That I put forth in the idea, once goes Homo sapien now, we're at a point of existential new existence in universe in terms of the evolutionary process that got started through, 3.8 billion years ago. What's the status of the Homo sapien as we begin to? We got the ability to either, in a certain sense, transcend history if we get to a point where we have the capability of providing for everyone in a way that transcends all the clad rules of conflict that come out of material scarcity, which has been the condition in which all human institutions evolve, or we can stop the evolutionary process, a unique moment in terms, this is not quantitative change, it's time of qualitative change. What form does that qualitative change take if do we begin to start seeing the beginnings of a quickening that begins to rival the process of punctuated equilibrium, the development of an evolutionary break that takes us into a new relation in the universe than what we've been for 200,000 years in Homo sapien. Where do we stand on that big picture that includes our knowledge that's growing exponentially every day at this moment?
Well, let me answer that by, because that's a very big question. But let me
You asked for, you wanted the big picture.
Yes, right.
And this goes out to the knowledge and, the whole purpose of the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, Joe, you were asking about creativity.
Yeah.
And about whether we could actually worship that creative, whatever it is itself. I mean, it's unfair to even call it a creative force.
That's one of the essential thoughts in your book.
Right, and it is, that it's just freaking astonishing. creativity, and whatever it is, we don't understand it yet, and those things we don't understand, we worship. That's the God between the cracks model. And then when it comes to the universe, Sumner, there's an answer here too, because once upon a time, this universe was a seething, scalding plasma of elementary particles. And a plasma is a soup. A plasma is a soup in which particles are moving at such incredible speeds that they bounce off, they collide like bullets colliding head-on, and at speeds far greater than bullets colliding, far, far greater than bullets colliding. And they bounce off and ricochet only to slam head-on into another particle. And they do this for the first 300,000 years of the cosmos. It's a particle slam dance. And it's one of the most intensely violent things you've ever seen in your life. And somehow protons and neutrons, the elementary particles that are participating in this, survive. Lord
And
alone
we're going
knows
to get
how.
evolution. We're going to get evolution. And we
But
get
no,
evolution.
let me continue this particular tiny slice of the story.
All right.
So, I've done this to you before, Harold, but we're sitting at a coffee table at the beginning of the universe, and we've been watching this particle slam dance for between 300,000 and 380,000 years. That's all it's
Of
been.
what? Of where's the 300,000?
That's the time from the Big Bang until the point where you and I are now sitting at our coffee table.
300,000.
It's, between 300,000 and 380,000 years. Just follow me on this.
Okay, I'll try.
So
I'll try. It seems a very
okay.
small number.
So we've been sitting here all of this time, and you make, you're the visionary, and I'm the crusty old cantankerous fart, and you say, any minute now, the strangest thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
These particles are going to slow down. And when they slow down, these things, relatively speaking the size of the Empire State Building, are going to discover that they have some sort of elementary longing.
And elementary what?
Longing, desire.
Right. I get you. I get where you're coming from.
Need to be fulfilled.
I can't follow.
Okay, and we've got these other particles, relatively speaking, the size of my fist. And they're going to discover that they have an elementary longing, an elementary yearning for something, for some form of completion. And the longing of the things the size of my fist and the longing of the things the size of the Empire State Building are going to fit each other perfectly. And these two things are going to come together. And I would say, Harold, you're crazy. This cannot possibly happen. We've been sitting here for 300,000 years, and all we've seen are particles slam dancing and
Help me
ricocheting.
out, Howard.
Go
What
ahead.
are you talking about 300,000 years? I
The
mean,
Big Bang.
We're talking about
Big Bang
300,000
is
years into the universe.
13.7 billion years, not
No.
300,000.
We're talking, we are at that point where the universe is only 300,000 years
Oh,
old.
yeah, we got a picture of Wham, the W map.
Yeah, well,
300,000
So,
years
yeah,
after.
so you and I are sitting around only 300,000
Yeah, but
years.
what I was posing to you was a
But wait,
question.
let me
Once
finish
we get
answering.
to evolution,
No,
we're gonna
you're
get
not
to
going to
the-
let me get to the answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Let
So,
him finish.
yes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, is everybody clear on this picture where it's 300,000
One
years
question.
after the universe
No,
began?
let him
yeah, but one question. What are the
Steven!
two elements that are banging?
I'm about to tell you.
Good.
Okay. So these two elements discover, indeed, they do have an inanimate longing, despite the fact that they are radically incongruous in every conceivable way. Their longings fit, and they fit with the precision of German precision machinery. And the little things are called electrons, and the great big things are called protons. And you make another prediction, and that there's more here than merely a mating of an electron and a proton. Other strange qualities we have never seen before, all of a sudden, going to pop forth. And one of those qualities is called the qualities of an atom, which is well beyond the qualities of merely an electron and a proton by themselves. Another quality is called hydrogen. Hydrogen? What the hell? We've never had anything but scalding plasma. And you're telling me we're going to have couplings, and you're telling me these couplings are going to produce these strange, weird, emergent properties called an atom and hydrogen? This is ridiculous.
No, those are synergies.
Those are synergies. Those are emergent properties.
Right.
And the universe has this habit of going through emergent, of climbing in invisible ways, climbing very, very tiny, by very, very tiny steps, and then suddenly hitting what you call punctuated equilibrium.
Well, that's
Suddenly, well, let me finish, suddenly hitting a stage where some grand emergent property, unpredictable,
well, I don't
comes
see
popping
that,
out.
if I may.
Yeah.
I mean, in evolutionary
Harold,
theory.
let him finish.
Well, I know, but get to the point. I
Well, let him finish so he
Give them
can.
13 billion more years.
No, we get to evolution.
The point is,
And bring it into the contemporary.
But Harold, he's going
When-
to do.
Harold, here's
Harold.
what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that occasionally we do reach the points of what you call punctuated equilibrium. Occasionally the way that the pieces fit together makes a whole of a kind we absolutely could not conceive.
Yeah, they're emerging properties.
Yeah, using our previous experience.
Yeah.
And if humanity, and you know that Ray Kurzweil has been predicting that we were about to hit one of those, he calls it the singularity.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm less optimistic than Ray Kurzweil because we humans have taken astonishing steps forward in terms of our technology. Those steps have given us abilities that were undreamed of only 50 years ago.
I made that point about 1970. There was a major moment of 14 years we've been wandering in the wilderness with an altered existential reality, evolutionary process on this planet.
But
Whence hail the Homo sapien in a realistic term without necessarily going back to the beginning of
But
the universe.
human nature is stubborn,
Well,
and somehow we perceive ourselves as being virtually the same. And somehow we can read a novel by Jane Austen that takes place in a period when none of the things that we take for granted existed. Jane Austen could not talk to Beijing while walking down the street if she wanted to.
Absolutely. No, I'm making a point for this
Yeah.
being unique.
Right.
Qualitative change,
Right.
punctuated equilibrium, and
That's-
evolutionary.
That's what we're talking
Are
about.
we on the verge of transcending 200,000 years of Homo sapien existence in this universe, and we're going to come into a new relationship of conscious understanding? Are we coming into a period of fulfilling of a process of, moving across entropy, perhaps some synergistic anti-entropic function in the universe? Are we coming to the end of the human experience?
No.
No, I don't think so at all.
You do not think we
No,
are?
no. I think that stubbornness of human nature is going to
Do you think we ever will?
come.
Will we ever?
That
We have. There was
It-
Homo
at
habilis
some
200,000
point,
years ago.
it's inevitable.
Yeah, okay, but then why not now? When
I
you
don't
get
see-
to an existential thing being signaled by the geopolitical
Right.
reality, you can stop consciousness.
But Joe, you had a point.
There is interesting thing. You know, Martin Buber wanted
Thank
to
God.
commit, Martin Buber
Yes, I
wanted
know,
to
he's
commit,
wonderful.
wait, wanted to commit suicide when he was a young boy. And the reason for it was that he so intensely wanted to know the meaning of this term in the last days, you know? And you're talking also about the last days,
Yeah.
in a way, right? And he was desperate because he couldn't find the answer to this existential, ultimate issue. Until he read something by Immanuel Kant. And Kant said, there are certain things that we will never know, and I'm paraphrasing it, and it shouldn't bother you.
Well, I like
And
it.
that's what saved his life.
I've come
After
up
that,
with
he didn't want to commit suicide.
I've come up with a field called omnology.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Go to
And a manifesto for omnology. And omnology is about taking all of the sciences that your curiosity leads you to, all of the humanities that your curiosity leads you to, everything that your curiosity leads you to, and rolling it together into one big ball.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Systems thing.
Yeah, rolling
There should be a department of everything
Right.
in any university.
Right.
Department of everything rather than the specialization.
Right, so omnology is designed for college sophomores. It's designed for college sophomores who are intellectually omnivorous.
Yeah.
And it's designed for the ones who are interested in psychology, biology, art history, and cinema all at once. And you know what happens to you in your sophomore year of college. Everybody walks up to you and says, to use my favorite word, schmuck, make up your mind. Until you make up your mind about whether you're a psychologist or an art historian, you're a nobody.
That's a way to
And-
co-opt the intellectual community.
Right, and that's the heart of that crisis that occurs to us when we're early in life and around 20 years old, that makes us ask, who am I? Because until we find a category into which we fit, we seem to be nobody. This field, omnology, says you're interested in these four things, That's your advantage.
Why limit it to
Keep-
4? Why not everything?
Because 4 is what we had in the example. So
Okay,
being
okay,
consistent.
okay,
So-
okay.
At any
I'm
rate,
knowledge,
but
that's a
so
good term.
take those 4 curiosities, follow them with every bit of energy in your being. They will keep nourishing you. They will keep your passions alive. When some of those curiosities subside and other new ones come in, follow the new ones too.
What-
And when you're, and well, let me finish. And when you're 40 years old, your friends will be going out to buy little red Corvettes or little red sports cars, and they'll be picking up blondes because they have cheating on their wives because they have no idea of who the hell they are and why they're on this planet.
What are the 4?
And wait, and you will not be going through that crisis because you will just be coming back from the wilderness for the first time with the fruits of all those 4 curiosities.
Yeah.
And the fruits of those 4 curiosities will make your contribution different from the contribution of anybody else on planet Earth. And this is a time for omnologists because we have Google and we have the internet. We have the tools to follow your curiosities. And because we're no longer in blue-collar jobs, we're no longer in jobs that depend on muscle work. We're in jobs that depend on mind work. We're in jobs that depend, in fact, on sensing what other people need before they even know they need it.
If
And
you're
then-
entrepreneurial.
No,
what
not
about
just
the
on-
maths? And
how-
what about Keynes and Schumpeter
well,
and Marx and economic theory?
Look,
and
even if
presidential
you're working in a mailroom
Yeah,
at CBS,
yeah.
and if you are trying to use tuned empathy, your own empathic abilities to put yourself in the minds of other human beings, if you're able to use that empathy to perceive what it would be like to open the envelopes that you're sending out right now, and you realize the difference between those that will be regarded as junk mail and thrown away and those that will be regarded as treats and delights, and you can convince your boss to do the treats and delights, you will be contributing in some small way to the experience of your fellow human
That
beings.
is true.
And you will be advancing the interests of your company at the
Well,
same time.
that might be good pattern recognition, which is one thing that we're good at.
Yes, and
it's
pattern
emerging
recognition is the
emerging
name of the
with
game.
Fiber, yeah.
Right.
How,
Yeah.
And this book, by the way, calls for this book. What's the commercial here? This
Yeah,
book.
Yes, give it a plug.
Yes,
Yes.
the God problem.
Yeah.
The God problem calls for a science that is finally capable of doing something that John Stuart Mill and George Henry Luce called for in 1835. They pointed to these emergent properties. They pointed to the supersized surprise of these emergent properties. They pointed to the absolutely unpredictable astonishments of emergent properties. And they said, our math is not capable of handling this. And our science is not capable of predicting this. And until our science and our math are capable of handling this and predicting this, they're not full sciences. And this book calls for, it's 177 years later, Harold, and that challenge has not been answered yet.
Is that the Enlightenment, more or less?
Well, it's the next enlightenment is to
Yeah.
come to understand the supersized surprise before it occurs, to come to be able to predict it, to come to be able to understand creativity, and which goes back to what you and I were discussing on camera one day, and that is the concept of entropy. There are 4 heresies in this book. And heresy number 1 is that A does not equal A. We won't go into that. Heresy number 2 is that 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. The example of that electron getting together with that gigantic thing, the proton, and producing an atom, hydrogen, that's 1 plus 1 certainly does not equal 2
And the fourth
in that kind of a universe.
the second law of
The third is that the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy, the law that all things tend toward disorder, that all things fall apart, is so wrong, it is stunning, astonishing, and disturbing.
But it's
that
accepted as
scientists-
gospel.
Yes, that scientists have
Across
never been
the
able
board.
to accept it as gospel because it goes against every bit of evidence that is under the nose of any scientist who knows anything of the story of this cosmos. This cosmos has not been running down, it has been running up.
Wow.
The example of the sugar cube and heat death is so wrong,
The
it's
what?
ridiculous.
The
The
sugar-
sugar
heat
cube
death.
and heat death.
Wow.
The universe has been constantly running up to new forms of order, complexity, and astonishment.
What do you think of the thing that was proposed by some like Fuller, among others? I'm a great fan of Fuller and that, and the idea of synergy, emerging properties.
Right.
That he cast about, as he said, for what's it all about, Alfred? You know, evolution. We come now to where we understand it. We couldn't have understood it as Homo habilis.
We don't understand.
And he said that the whole biological evolutionary process is an anti-entropic function in universe that moves across entropy and brings increased conscious pattern of understanding to the process of which we are a part. We may be coming into a new relationship to the cosmos that we've been in ignorance, and we've been in a condition like Homo habilis was to us. We may be coming into a new condition or relationship in the universe of knowing if we make it, if we don't blow it up, like Jerry said, that Isaac Asimov said they'll blow it up, because it's very real. They're posing to unleash these mass weapons that are existentially new.
Some kind of meteorite, though.
And with the ability to take care of the whole of the environment, the whole of the Homo sapien species within an ecological context, is equally new at the level of capability at this very moment. Trying to distinguish this very moment as a moment of qualitative transformation in an evolutionary process that can only be compared at the beginning stages of what's called punctuated equilibrium, when the new, qualitatively, not quantitatively, is emerging. And we can't, it's never mentioned. I don't. I mean, this is not your normal time.
Yeah.
This is like an end time.
Right.
Or this is like a time of an awakening to, it's like coming out of the birth canal or something.
Right.
I don't know, I'm just...
Howard,
Yeah.
as an entomologist.
Yeah.
Okay.
An omnologist, right?
How did you say it?
Omnologist.
As an omnologist. I never knew what I was, so that's
Right.
kind of nice to know. It's really a kick. Because I used to say we would put it in the movie because I had so many directions going, video, putting things in the movie, finding out why the mechanism was what it was.
Right.
And it took 30 years to get to this point, but I'm on the other side, so it's really a kick. Because
Right.
I'm coming out of the wilderness with something that I hope may be a great contribution to society.
Right.
Which is always, I think, something that we would like to do as a human being, is to contribute to society.
Right.
I've been looking at systems of how do we get to man 1, man 2, man 3.
Right.
And of course, you have the Venus Project, and
No, what's the Venus Project?
That's major zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist, that technology one day will, and it's by great design.
Right.
He's a 94-5-year-old man. What's his name?
I forget.
Okay.
Down in Florida, I think they
Yeah.
sold it.
Brilliant man.
Right.
Well, we'll talk more about the Venus Project, but he shows that with good design, we can have everything all capable. He's designed some fantastic designs.
Right.
But here we are at what I call the dark ages of the modern era,
Right.
where all these isms are holding us back from this awakening that we can get to. So we have to, where I feel is that we can bridge these gaps, slowly get these mechanisms to work. Housing, healing, education, prosperity.
For all.
For all, of course. It can't be
Not
for a
for
few. That then we can see that next big leap in mankind that we've been discussing.
Right.
So my kick has been putting the economic systems together that could work.
Right.
The housing, the healing, and also in a social network that would be inclusive to all.
Right.
That's the only time that we're going to be able to go out of our space and become man 1, when we're controlling the earth and understanding all its systems, and then man 2 going outside into the universe, and then man 3, throughout the Milky Way galaxy into wormholes, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a great awakening to find out what I'm being tagged for,
Well, there's a great existential contest taking place under our very noses at this point, and it's the election.
Uh-huh.
And some of these philosophical issues may not seem as if they have anything to do with the election, but they have everything to do with the election.
Yes.
Because right now the underlying premises of the thinking on the right and the thinking of the Republican Party is that the only way you can motivate people to do anything is by offering them money. That's why people do things.
Right.
And it's only by giving people the possibility of becoming tremendously rich that you can motivate their creativity. And that's a hypothesis. And the question is whether it's true. Now,
It's a hyperbole in a...
Well, there is a woman who she studies primarily the drug industry. And she points out to you that the drug industry in the days of Jonas Salk, in the days when men struggled with each other, when men competed with each other, it was primarily men, and when men and women were in a heavy-duty competition, they were competing for fame. They weren't competing for huge bonanzas of
Less
money.
bleed.
We had something like 10 to 20 times as many drug patents per year as we have today. And since it's been reduced to nothing but money, the number of drug patents being filed every year has gone down dramatically. And you know the research that demonstrates that when you offer people a cash reward for something they did because they loved it, the love goes up.
Yeah, that's right.
So human nature is more complex than Ayn Rand, who says that selfishness is the best thing that you can ever do, and that anything that opposes selfishness or proposes any form of altruism or generosity is poisonous and sin. These are genuine, deep philosophical issues right now, and by 48 hours from now, we may have a president who falls on the side of human nature that says only money motivates people.
Or you, if I may, Howard, you know, that which rules in geopolitics, we said it earlier, you could call it just political science, don't be ideological or anything, believe in any of these things. You could call it politely real politics. Be realistic, not idealistic. But it's also pronounced in a more German Haushofer, realpolitik.
Right.
And that is that he who has the gun makes the rules.
Right.
He who can conquer is above the norm.
Well, what's happening?
And can set the pattern. And that principle still holds in international
But it's
relations.
shifting very quickly.
It's shifting because China now has been acquiring a navy for a long time. It's been acquiring a navy for a reason. It's been acquiring a navy in order to lay claim to the lands in the South China Sea, to the islands in the South China Sea, and to the resources near those islands, to things like oil. And it has enough weapons. It doesn't have enough weapons to confront the United States directly, but it has enough weapons to intimidate Japan, for example. So we're up against this situation that I follow it every day.
It's amazing.
Yeah, every day it's changing. And China, suddenly, phrases being used that I haven't seen being used about China for a long, long time. That the PLA, the Chinese People's Liberation Army, is the biggest army in the world. And its military budgets have been increasing at a rate of roughly 12% a year, while the economy has been increasing at a rate of roughly 9.5% a year. So it's a power, and it means to assert itself, and it apparently is anxious to assert itself now.
Well, that's just asserting realpolitik.
But you know what? That can change in a twinkling of an eye. We as dreamers that create the mechanisms that, not through the motivation of money, but the understanding that money is a tool that can get us the tools that we need in order to have the freedom to be able to create the abundance. If we can get an understanding that, and through good design, and for instance, I'll give you a very simple one. I have one that opens up 10 in strategic locations, Harvard, Yale, Berkeley. Those 10 open up 10 more.
Right.
You got 100. 10 more in those strategic locations, 1,000, 10,000 locations.
Opening 10 what?
1 or 10,
10 units of, which I'll talk later about. All of a sudden, we're doing what we're doing in these units, and educating ourselves with owning the businesses and receiving the dividends. And then you ship that all over. Then you can heal the planet from the fear of separation and nationalism. Or it's what my album says: grow up or blow up. You know, so you got to be able to. We're at a very important part of time in our society. Either we're going to make it to have that love chakra and go beyond government, you know, and I think everybody thinks it's going to be from academia, you know, and presidents and stuff. I see the change happening from the grassroots of enough people understanding that demands the change to the leadership.
Well, you got to get out of an idea. The only way to distribute demand to the masses of the people is through their labor participation in an economic process that's increasingly capital intensive, and all those capital instruments are owned by tiny.
There's no question that we have to do everything. Once upon a time, Ray Kroc pulled off a miracle. There were teenagers, and they wanted to work. They wanted to earn extra money, but they couldn't. Because you couldn't get a job unless you showed experience, which meant you couldn't get a job unless you had gotten a job. And Ray Kroc invented a system. He broke down the process of making a quality hamburger, and he broke it down in such simple terms that it could be taught to anybody, and he didn't need experience. So Ray Kroc took a segment of the population that wanted to be productive and was not allowed to be, and created a means by which they could be made productive. And the same thing has to be done with just about everybody who we would consider poor today.
Well, how about vesting instead of currently, the only thing they talk about in terms of distributing demand, that is buying power, effective buying power to the mass of the people of the world, which is done now only, at least the only thing you ever hear is, by creating jobs within a world economy where the relationship between labor and technological instruments is shifting ever more toward technological instruments, and the technological instruments producing the wealth are owned by a tiny plutocratic class in every political entity and in the world order, and that's being backed up by a notion of realpolitik. I mean, you have to have an alternative way of distributing demand. Keynes said you're going to have massive technologically induced unemployment unless you go off economic theorizing at all. How are we going to, one thing he says is you could build ownership into the masses of the people as a way of distributing income, which would give them leisure to do what they want to do rather than what they do within a quasi-authoritarian system that has been the tradition throughout all of human history.
I don't know. I think you have to harness people's passions, and you have to.
Yeah, but if you had $40,000 that's coming to you every year, are you going to blow out your brains because you don't have a job that you have to go off to get a sense of identity and all the bullshit they give us about how wonderful it is to go to the factory and work, rather than allowing the capital asset and accumulation be to those with past savings only, and no ownership of that capital asset, that private sector which is producing the wealth. Why don't we democratize that and let everybody have income from that relationship, the way things are being produced, and then they're free to do what they want.
See, Howard, what he's saying is
kind of way,
giving people the opportunity that you take the scenario of money so you can do your passion. In other words, there has to be a system to eventually get us to a point where we have enough leisure time to do our passion. And then when that happens, the compounding of money at a young age will take that place, and then you say there's the master teachers, and then you're teaching to be entrepreneurs and future thinkers instead of you got to get a job so you can survive, and all those kind of things. So the modalities, like myself and binary economics, which I discussed to you just in a brief moment that I would like to share more, are real social economic systems that can free us from that tyranny of job making, so we can really do what you were describing, our passion.
Well, we're getting into alternative economic systems which are beyond my meager abilities, even though I've written about capitalism, or I've really written about the Western system. But and some people are falling asleep. So
no, may I ask you one question?
Your talk has been a dream.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Howard, can I ask a practical question?
Oh my God,
If I have a chance to read one of your books, should it be this one?
yes, read this one.
This one.
Yeah.
And where do I get it?
Amazon.com or a local bookstore.
Great.
It should be in all Barnes and Nobles.
I think we should all be buying it.
I warn you, Sumner, it's very hard to put down once you start reading it. It's so brilliantly written.
Can I get it?
Really good.
Can I get it on my iPad?
You can get it on. I can get it on Kindle.
If you can get
But
it on Kindle, you can
Okay, then you can get it on your iPad.
Right.
Yeah.
You can put Kindle on an iPad.
Oh, neat. Okay,
All right,
so you
I'm
can
gonna
download the app.
I'm gonna go home and order it right
Okay,
now.
terrific. Let me know what you do.
We're starting out to order it right this moment.
Good, good. And then we'll get together at either the end of the month or the beginning of December. When
Can
things
we give him a hand of applause?
Here.
By all means, thank you, Howard. Thank you. Really.
A wonderful, fun audience, and yes, I do have a sense of law and divinity or whatever it is for that.
Real.
You will find.
Well, that's what I wanted on my Kindle. So what is this? Well, this is a great difficulty, and this big bagel theory says that before, the university, Anthony University, they annihilate. Through a top
Oh, that's good.
that really neat happens to be in the center of the battle. And it starts all over again,
Oh my
which
God.
is begging the question.
What's happened?
And I know it's begging the question. Yes, so I'll see you. Yes, I'm sorry I took you to sleep here for a few minutes.
Oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Well, watch very carefully because there's so much Karl Rovianism going on that is election theft that it concerns me. I always thought it was just spirit thing. Oh, okay. Well, that can be worse. That machine can be rigged. There are really guys that are here. I don't know if there are more than one. What sort of game?
Card.
Yes, right. Okay, thanks, Steve.
I'm a loving part.
Oh, good. Jerry,
Terrific.
okay, it was a pleasure meeting you, and hopefully I'll see you again soon under some circumstances or
As
context.
soon as the weather gets well.
Yeah, good, okay, terrific. Have a wonderful night.
You just said it.
So watch the machines. Try to make sure they're honest.
My brother will come up to me.
Yeah, what does he do? Yeah, right. Oh, good. We need readers. We're going to write books. Right. And the big trick with stuff you're talking about, Steve, is plugging it into society. Here's the trick. The missing element is always promotion, publicity, advertising. In other words, getting the message out. Remember I was talking about those guys with the stones? Well, that's the necessary thing. Yeah.
And I find that's what people ask me to be the Jews.
Right.
So you have to do it in a way.
Right.
And I'm shooting it as real.
Right.
What great way to bring the realism
Right.
by showing you how it works.
Yeah.
And demanding the desire to want to be a part of it.
Right. Well, it's very interesting.
I want to talk more about experience with social, music side and stuff. Which
Yeah.
I'm going to be getting into.
That would be very nice. That's very difficult.
Nobody throws a party like you guys do.
Right.
Nobody throws a party like you guys do.
Rises to the occasion of interest.
Have to push like hell because you're competing with a million other
This was nice. It was a little intimate.
Right.
What you need to do is a little bit of direction.
Right. Well, their family's name. Well, I don't know. I'm 77. So I wonder if the people know what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't have been able to meet them at their house.
Yeah. Right.
So once you do that, you have that little window.
Right.
In order to get the point.
Right. And it makes it incredible persistence. Or who's lazing on the couch. What time is it?
I would love to see what I would love for you to see me.
Yeah.
Just for the thought. So
Right.
it's mine.
If there's something short, because I'm so swamped that it's ridiculous. And people say, well, things I don't have time to, and somebody's been trying to call me the entire time that I've been talking here. Let me see who will, it's probably the one that day. 5 missed calls. I had so much fun with you last week. And we actually did 2 talks. One we did for George and one we did for Yes. 5 calls, all along.
Well, at least she's consistent.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
what is it? Oh, fabulous. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah, I needed one of these. And this is LED. Because I go walking through the park at midnight, and sometimes run across something in, the book that I'm listening to, and need a light to see what it is that I've just run across and underlined.
I wanted to send you hard cover.
Did I give you my card?
Yeah, but it's not.
Let me write it down. Let me find a piece of paper. Hang on a second. Yes, that will do. Okay, so it sounds like we're...
Amazing. And you're made for television.
I know, that's what we've got to get the television
Is there a lot
series.
of you done on television?
Oh, we have the Howard D. Amoga series, but the real goal, let me
Yeah.
just write this down.
Go ahead, do what you have to do.
Oh,
Yes.
this is a red pen, okay.
You're a major, researcher. You should be all over the, as a teacher.
Well, the goal
Yes, sir.
has been, for a long time, to do the series that picks up where connections and the ascent of man left off. And that's,
Reassuring. I saw a thing last night that had my attention, the channel 111.
yeah,
Have you
what is
seen
that?
Well, it was a thing, it's the science.
Yeah,
They had a thing, they had me transfixed. It was
Yeah.
about the birth of the universe. It was so fucking
Amazing.
My language good.
Yeah.
It was well done. The graphics were amazing.
yeah,
They had little pieces from Kako and stuff.
Right.
And they were talking about the birth and all those things you were talking about.
right. Could it be the Science Channel
Yeah,
or
it's
the
science.
National
No,
Geographic?
it's not the science. It's called, what the hell is it called? Get the clicker quick. And put it up. Judge, hand me the clicker, will you? Please?
Is this it?
Yes,
Oh, that,
that's the
okay.
thing. Yeah. Let me see, it'll come up. I was amazed. I didn't think anything like that existed.
Speak with an attorney on a weekly basis. Since you are paying your
It may not be now that
if
I'm
you
talking
find
about it, we'll have
that
something
attorney
else.
is not
It's a Science Channel.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
This thing on cell. Last night they had it, it went on hours, and it was all about the birth of the universe,
Wow.
and the science seemed good to me, the voices were
Right.
authentic, the graphics were beautiful.
Right, well, my TV rep has taken me down to the Science Channel to meet with him. I met the guy who ran it, though he's just retired.
Yeah.
And I've met with the,
See, this is biology. It
Right.
goes into,
it's very neat.
yeah, it's a hell of a I was transfixed over it.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Right,
I sat here one night, Howard, with my uncle dog.
yeah,
And I was sitting there and I was saying, what the hell? Maggie went to sleep and I said, let's check and see what they've got. And I went through it to see how many channels there were,
Right.
and clicking through one after another
Right.
and everything like that. And there was nothing but, dancing bears and naked ladies
Yeah.
and, Nielsen stuff. And
Right.
looking for something good. And there's very, very little.
and there's very
But
little
what a
history of
tremendous
science on the
way
Science
to have
Channel.
education.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could be a tremendous educator.
Well, you know the James Burke series and the Jacob
Absolutely, I
series.
loved it. That goes way
And-
back 20 years.
Right, and that's what I want to do, is the show that goes beyond those.
Well, I would have thought that would be a no-brainer for our time, But they had 1,996 channels, and there was practically.
Wow,
Springsteen made the movie, the song 57 channels and nothing on.
Yeah.
1,900 channels, and there was virtually nothing on it of
Amazing.
any interest.
amazing.
But this channel, I was.
Look how
really
interesting
amazed
that
how
is,
good the
man.
program
It's good
is.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
And
start
that's the
checking
way
it out.
we should do it. One other thing I suggest, you say Carter will.
Carter,
Emmer.
yeah, Carter's a friend.
That's something I think, because the exponential increasing of the capability is, and you know what, the video display screens, and it's coming already. The largest video display screens that we have are planetarium.
Right.
And that's the thing where they're getting standards now. And they
Okay,
got
well,
5 around in the radius and a keystone,
Right.
and you've got surround, right?
Well, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
5 years ago, I came up with a concept called Space Asia. And the idea was to put together the ultimate space fair, the World's Fair of Space.
Okay.
And it was going to be in India because India's ISRO, their NASA,
Yeah.
does business with between 300 and 500 companies. So that's 300 to 500 potential sponsors.
Right.
Where would the
And
location?
It was going to be in India.
Where?
And I had a Malaysian partner. It was
Where
going to be in Mumbai, not Mumbai. It was going to be in Bangalore. My partner in Malaysia got the concept through to India's Chamber of Commerce, their equivalent of our Chamber of Commerce,
Yeah.
which is a very powerful organization. And they took the concept and they dumbed it down and they turned it into Space Biz 88 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the concept that we run with. They wanted me to be there.
Yeah.
They had screwed my partner in Malaysia. I didn't feel comfortable
They're
going
very
there.
Indians are very good business guys.
Yeah, well, they can
Very
also be
drive
very very dishonest.
Yes, right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I hear.
So,
Right.
so at any rate, I didn't go, and it was, I go to almost any because I want the adventure.
Yeah.
But I didn't go to this one, and guess what happened the day of the event, Space Biz? It was the day of the Mumbai Massacre.
I'll be damned.
Yeah. So, it was-
Unforeseen
Yeah,
circumstance,
exactly.
Mr. Eisenberg.
so
you're a
2
little
months
biased
ago,
or something.
2 months ago, my Malaysian partner, who has been running a fairly major events company with a Chinese investor behind it, called, or she emailed, and she said, I quit my job, and 3 other people have quit with me, and we've quit because we're going to make Space Asia happen.
Okay.
In other words, they bet their careers on this.
Oh, damn, okay.
So,
Just how long ago?
this was 2
matter-
months ago.
2
So I
months
had
ago.
my latest meeting with her at 1 o'clock this morning.
Okay,
Finished
how'd
at
it
2 o'clock
go?
this morning.
How's it look?
Well, she knows the concept. It is not to have dinky little booths. It's to have a World's Fair. It's to have an exhibition that you walk through. And she wants to use these 360-degree domes.
Oh, boy.
And,
Okay.
and I know Ed Lance is one of the leading people.
Yeah.
Ed Lance, well, he's one of the leading people in
Yeah.
the 360-degree dome thing. Don Davis is one of the leading space artists who's been developing animations for 360-degree domes. And so my job, my homework assignment is to get Ed and to get Don and get the price on 5 minutes of animation for a 360-degree dome.
Well, there they've got, yeah, it'd be good to talk to Carter, and also this fellow David McConville.
Now, who's that?
David McConville
Yeah.
is,
Okay, you lovely people.
you go home, Joseph.
I have to go.
Well, I think you found a fellow religionist, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we do.
But you know what?
Yeah.
Your card disappeared. They have
Oh,
to
let me give you another one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good,
Because
Carter.
I may email you the articles also besides.
Okay, that would be so helpful.
Yeah.
Because asking my assistant to try to scan it, she'll never get the
No,
time.
I will.
It seems to be taking out more than one, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, pass them around.
Okay.
Okay. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Oh, say,
Your pleasure.
so good, you're looking good, pal, you're looking good. You're looking, you feeling good, yeah?
Yeah.
Good, I'm
just
glad
glad
you
you
put
put
on
Last-
92 years old.
Yeah,
Wow,
would
that's great.
the TED affair help promote that?
I would love to do TED.
I think
You've not had him.
It sounded like this would say.
I've had TEDx. I've never had an invitation for TED itself.
I think that, if once everything gets together, that it would be presented at TED, it would be the backing and the support to move that forward.
That actually doesn't, this is a big proposition. I've been taken down to Washington twice. I've met with the president of the Discovery. These people are all changing constantly.
Yeah, I know.
But the president of the Discovery Channel, the guy who had been made head of the Science Channel, he looked at me like this, and he said, 13-part fast start.
Yeah.
And then they discovered my Islamic
Stain.
problems,
Yeah.
and they backed off real
Yeah.
fast. But that doesn't seem to be happening now, but I've been taken down there to meet with 3 of the major programming heads for PBS, and with the guy who science programming for WETA, which produces tons of hours of programming every year, hundreds of hours.
Right.
And now my TV rep has been talking me up to the people at National Geographic.
Okay.
And there's this filmmaker named Mark Lafia who just he interviewed me for a film he's making, and he has such a vivid vision of this show of this series that's beyond Bernowski and beyond Burke.
Wow, that's really going to,
That,
yeah.
but we need a production company that does business with PBS and History Channel and
Yeah.
Discovery all the time.
Sure.
Because they
Well,
need.
These people might be worth it. I don't know.
Well, that's one of the people I was meeting.
really impressed with how good it is. But
Yeah.
anyway, David McConville, he's a
Yeah.
young fellow.
Right.
And he's now become the president of the Buckminster Fuller Institute, which is the leading I still can't know how you could have written a book called this without Mr.
Yeah.
Fuller consideration. But anyway,
But you've been kind enough to forgive me.
But he's, not at all, no, I just couldn't understand, because so much of this emerging property is synergy.
Right.
And there's synergies that come with time, and there's newer things emerging you can't see and everything like that. But anyway, David McConville's really good, and he's very close with Carter. They work together a lot. He comes out of light shows and things like that. He's only 39 or at the outside 40, but he's bright as a tack. He's really good. And he's somebody you might want to be aware of. David McConville. I could send you a link if you want.
That would be very helpful.
I did a program with him. In fact, I think I'm going to air one Friday.
Yeah.
A re-airing of a program I did with him in December last year. And he's in touch with Carter, and they've got those things. It's developing. That is those are the video display, those are the multimedia display screens of the future.
Wow.
And it's beginning to emerge even, as I understand it, because they're getting standards between the various ones. They got about 50 around the world. There's camaraderie between them. And they're getting the standards worked out so it'll be universal, like electricity.
So Atlantis is very much at the center of that.
Okay,
so
then he would probably know Carter and that.
They do.
But David McConville is somebody you want to be aware of. Because he's also a doer.
Yeah. All these guys hang out together at Burning Man.
Oh, yeah, I've never been there.
So,
you've been there?
I've never been there either.
Yeah.
They show one of my videos.
How well do you know Carter?
Well, Carter and I, it was a very strange story. We've only met once or twice.
Oh, God, he's a dear friend of mine.
We did a performance together at a gallery called AIR, and he did a terrific performance, and I did my performance. It was about fashion and clothing, and it was Bruce Damer, the guy who modeled the vehicles that, NASA had this wacky idea of getting two of those Radio Shack style cars and putting them on a foreign body in the solar system, and Carter was hired to model all of the landscapes and then model the cars, and they drove the model cars around on the model landscapes, and they critiqued them, and then they redesigned them. Carter did the redesign and did new landscapes. The destination was Mars, and the two little Radio Shack buggies are the Mars rovers.
Right.
So,
you see that thing landed on Mars? That was an amazing piece of work, man.
I didn't think they could do it. I didn't think they could do it.
But anyway, there is beginning to emerge. I get word is that even at some architectural firms, they're beginning. It's the television is like a little tiny slit in reality.
Right.
But this is with the exponential increasing. If we get down to a right economic thing, the exponential increase, they don't even know how to monetize. They're hold it up. They don't know how to monetize all the capability they have. We're going to be swimming in it.
Yeah.
And so that's the future of multimedia. Is the planetarium. It makes IMAX look like a little slit in reality.
And
there are architectural firms now that are, as progressive ones, that are beginning